This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We have been thinking about these matchups for 10 days already. It is now time to finally dive in fully and get you ready for the first round of the college football playoff. Today, we're going to go through all 4 games with Riley Thomas breaking down his thoughts on those 4 games, what he expects to see on each side of the football as far as who will move the ball, who won't, who will struggle, etc. And Riley's best bets for the opening round of this college football playoff. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I'm a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Riley Thomas. You can find him on X at _Riley8. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is covering the NBA, college football, got the NFL stuff as well. Riley, happy round 1 to you. How you doing today?
Doing great. Getting really excited to watch these games. I've kind of always been for a bigger playoff, but obviously we got a lot of complaints about it right now. But I think at the end it'll be fun. We get more football, so I'm excited.
I think the complaints will die down once the games actually start, because it's always like whenever it's the NCAA basketball tournament, you hear like the complaints like, oh, this team should have gotten in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then the second you get the first tip off, it's like, okay, we can focus on the games. We can ignore Alabama, ignore Ole Miss, ignore Miami and all that stuff. Just focus on these games. And like the format, yeah, I think people complain about the format still with the buys and stuff like that. But overall, I feel like we get to focus on football now, which is exactly where I want to be.
Right. Yeah, we talked about this a little earlier, but yeah, I think a lot of these games could be closer than what the spreads say. And yeah, I mean, we're used to a lot of blowouts this time of year in college football, but I think we could have some fun ones this weekend for sure.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, the spreads are large, all greater than a touchdown right now. But those could still be competitive games, or maybe the team covers, but it could still be competitive for 4 quarters. And that's what we're here to watch as college football fans. Today, we're going to talk to Riley about some futures bets that he wants to snag before the opening kickoff on Friday. Then we'll go game by game, breaking down Riley's thoughts and his favorite bets at FanDuel Sportsbook, all right here in just 1 second. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast. Already broke down my thoughts on every NFL Week 16 game, going game by game there, breaking down where it's seen betting value for this week at FanDuel Sportsbook. More thoughts on that tomorrow. Megan Payton will join me for her best bets for NFL Week 16. And on Friday, talking top player props with Austin Swaim, of course, to get his thoughts on NFL Week 16 as well. All those here on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, but also on our brand new YouTube page. The Best Bet Show, we live tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then the NFL Player Prop Show, 10 a.m. Eastern Friday, our NFL DFS show live, 10 a.m. on Thursday, myself and Brandon Gadula. Go to the YouTube page, subscribe there, turn on notifications, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you who have done so already. The brand new playoff is here, and this year there are 12 teams, which means even more chances to win on FanDuel. The action starts on December 20th, and right now, new customers on FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets. Just place any $5 bet. You get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Use your bets on spreads, live bets, totals, and so much more. Plus, when you win, you'll get paid instantly. Make every moment more and download America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel, today. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-79-7777 or visit ccpg.org/Chat Connecticut. Visit M&D Gambling Help Oregon, Maryland. Help and see if it's a gambling helpline, ma.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Riley, we'll go game by game here in a second. But first, wanted to get your thoughts on the futures market, because obviously things will change a bunch after this week's game. So any futures you want to snag before we see kickoff on Friday here?
Yeah, I think when the bracket came out, it was obvious we had a couple teams here with pretty favorable paths, and I think one of those where you're getting really good value was Notre Dame. Makes me nervous at being Notre Dame with what they've done recently, and honestly, this seems to be a hot pick everywhere. I'm pretty if I remember right, the day I think it was a morning of after brackets came out. Notre Dame was like plus 1,100 to win the championship, and now they're at plus 700. So it's kind of been a consistent fall. Makes me nervous that everybody's circling the same thing, but there's a lot of stuff out there that says there's good reason for this. One of the things I saw on Twitter that was really interesting that I've kind of just said over and over again anytime I'm writing about this pick is college football data's ELO ratings. They had kind of like a probability thing they came out with, just percentages on where they think teams are going to end up, whether it's semifinals, playing the championship, win it, whatever it may be. The team with the highest chance to play in the national championship and win the national championship is Notre Dame, according to that metric. That's really interesting to me. It's by a lot too to just play in the national championship. They gave them around a 44% chance. The second highest we saw was Texas at 33% to play in that game. It's a big difference. And then if you look at winning the national championship, this model was giving Notre Dame about a 28% chance to win it. The second highest team behind Notre Dame in that metric was Oregon at about 16%. So big differences here. And even I think my favorite pick, if we had to go anything with this Notre Dame future, is just for them to play in the national championship. I think it's a lot safer. It's plus 390. Obviously, you can just look at the model I was talking about, and they're nearly giving them a 50-50 shot just to play in that game. And then you can get almost plus 400 odds from the be there. I mean, that's fantastic value. You can't ask for much better. But I think it's just a way safer pick to do this as well, because obviously they're favored by over a touchdown against Indiana on Friday. We have some hypothetical odds, and if they were to play Georgia, Notre Dame is actually an early favorite for that. I think it's minus 1.5. Obviously, Georgia is expected to be without Carson Beck, so that's a big reason there. But, I mean, right there, I mean, there's a good chance they're in the semifinal, and if you're in the semifinal, you're probably looking at one of Penn State, Boise State, or SMU, and you got to like your chances in any of those games. So my favorite pick by a landslide for futures is going to be Notre Dame to make the national championship.
Yeah, that's plus 390 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Go to the playoff parlays. You can find that there. Again, 7-1 to win it all. And as you mentioned, they're minus 1.5 in the hypothetical matchup against Georgia right now at FanDuel Sportsbook. And I ran through different power ratings for college football, kind of blended them together. When I ran those, Notre Dame was fourth of those blended power ratings, and they were above every other team in their half of the bracket. So the second highest ranked team on their half was Georgia, and that doesn't account for the Carson Beck injury. So I think what we're saying makes sense in that rating on a neutral field, not accounting for the fact that Georgia would have more rest. It would have made Notre Dame a 1.7 point favorite, and then you take out Carson Beck, that's going to move a bit more. Again, Georgia does get benefit of rest, which does help, but this is, again, you were looking at that one model, the ELO model, but this is 5 separate models blended together saying the same thing, where Georgia would be a favorite against, or Notre Dame would be a favorite against Georgia in that semifinal game. So I don't think it's, just relying on one model. It is, the data does point to Notre Dame. And as you said, that's kind of scary, but like the data is what the data is.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things out there. Another one I saw was just if you look at net EPA per play, we have 4 teams in the top 5 in that metric for this field. 3 of those are not in their region. You have Ohio State 1, Texas 2, Oregon is 5th. The only team that's in the top 5 of this metric in the bottom half of that bracket is Notre Dame at 4 and EPA as well. So there's so much out there. Like you said, hey, if everything's pointing to it, it's kind of hard not to take it.
And as much as it might scare us, it may be the right thing to do still. They can only not win big games until they win a big game. And they beat Texas A&M on the road this year. So, like, they have done it. This is a different stage, obviously, but they can definitely potentially get that job done. So let's talk about that first playoff game on Friday night between Notre Dame and Indiana. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Notre Dame favored by 7.5, and the total in this game is 51.5. Now, liking Notre Dame does not mean we are writing off Indiana. You've been on Indiana this entire year. So, Riley, let's talk about this game individually. We can like Notre Dame in the future market, but still talk about this game the way it is. Can Indiana keep pace here enough to cover, or does Notre Dame handle business here in the opener?
Yeah, so obviously with me being on Notre Dame, I think they'll win this, but I think it's going to be closer than what people think. I understand why everybody's overlooking Indiana at this point. I get it. They haven't really played anybody. They got pretty much destroyed against Ohio State, so I get it. But I don't know. I think I'm a little nervous for Notre Dame here just from the fact that everybody's writing off Indiana. It is an in-state game, so I wouldn't be surprised if you have a decent amount of Indiana fans there. And I think my favorite pick in this is probably the under. And when you're talking about an under and then a pretty decent spread, I think you like the underdog to cover more than you would the favorite if there's not many points. Of course, Notre Dame loves to run the ball, and Indiana is really good at stopping the run. They're only giving up 2.6 yards per carry on the season, which is second in the nation. So if they even have a serviceable run defense in this, you're forcing Notre Dame to throw the ball. You like your chances of eliminating their offense. But on the other side of the ball, I think what ultimately gets this done is going to be Notre Dame's pass defense. It's an EPA allowed per passing attempt or per drop back. My fault, but they're first in the entire country, Notre Dame's pass defense in that metric. And for Indiana, their run offense isn't very efficient. Their entire offense is leaned pretty heavily on big plays in the passing attack. If that's not there, they're probably not going to score much either. But just from the standpoint of maybe not many points being in this, I think Indiana can at least keep it close.
So looking at the total in this game, right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, it is a 51.5. Under is -105. You mentioned that from a matchup perspective, things working pretty well against, where it's strength on both sides. Under 51.5, -105. I think that does kind of add up well, given the considerations you said about the way these two teams stylistically seem to mesh.
Yeah, another thing is in the end, I like Notre Dame to win just because Riley Leonard, their quarterback's been pretty dang good for a while. So while their passing attack doesn't have the craziest numbers, I think he can do enough to win this. But yeah, I think both defenses are really suited to take away some strengths, like you said.
All right, so Riley is on the under for Indiana and Notre Dame. That is 51.5 at -105. Let's talk now about the Saturday games beginning with SMU at Penn State. Right now at FanDuel Sportsbook, Penn State favored by 8.5. Total in this game is up at 53.5. Penn State has the same reputation as Notre Dame, where people say they can't win the big games, and they have struggled for sure. But this one is in Happy Valley. They're favored by 8.5. How do you see this game playing out, Riley?
Yeah, so I'm kind of the opposite with Penn State here, where Notre Dame, I can look past it. Penn State, I can't really. And this kind of goes to, I didn't mention it when we went over the futures market, but another one of my favorite picks is SMU to make the semifinal, and that's plus 450.
Okay.
And my biggest reasoning is just the matchup they have with Penn State. If they were to somehow win this game, their hypothetical odds have them at -6.5 against Boise State. So obviously you get past this. Semis looks pretty likely. But just focusing on this matchup, I'm not bold enough to go with SMU on the money line, but College Football Nerds, their projection model actually has SMU winning this game by 2.5 points. So that's interesting, at least enough to have me be confident in SMU covering. But biggest thing for me here is Penn State loves to run the ball. You got a high rush play rate. And then SMU has one of the best run defenses in the country, point blank period. It's 5th in the nation in EPA allowed per carry. Also, if you just look at overall EPA per play, Penn State's 11th, SMU is 12th. So just overall efficiencies of these teams, it's pretty much neck and neck. So once again, I think it could be closer than what that 8.5 point spread is saying. I'm a big fan of Kevin Jennings too, SMU's quarterback. I think he's really good. Their efficiency with their passing attack is really good. They're top 15 in the country and yards per passing attempt. And for Penn State, I think if you had to circle anything on their defense, you could maybe go out a little bit. It's their secondary. Obviously, that hinges on assuming you can stop Abdul Carter in their pass rush. But SMU's top 20 in the country in pass blocking grade as well over at Pro Football Focus. So I think SMU's passing attack has enough to maybe score, and they've been over 28 points in every game since September 6th against BYU, where they kind of had a dud, but they've been over 28 points in every game since. So along with that cover, I think SMU's point total that's at 21.5, the over for that deserves some attention to me, because I like Kevin Jennings and I like his chances of making some noise in this, making a name for himself on a national stage. So yeah, I'm just overall a big fan of SMU, and I think their run defense will keep this pretty close.
Yeah, Jennings has been really fun to watch. Big part of the reason why they were able to make that game against Clemson pretty competitive too. Clawback in that one, and I think that why that was important was, let's say Penn State does build a lead in this game. That to me says, like, yes, Abdul Carter can pin his ears back and rush the quarterback, which is frightening to think about. But at the same time, SMU can score points in a negative game script, so you can take this over 21.5 for the team total and still say, okay, Penn State may build a lead. This bet isn't dead yet. I think that's an encouraging thing. If you're thinking about like the paths to this bet cashing, that to me is encouraging. The fact that they've shown they can score against a pretty good defense, even when things are working against them.
Yeah, definitely agree. I trust SMU's offensive line enough to at least give some time as well. So yeah, that's the biggest key to me. Can they contain Abdul Carter? We'll see. It's going to be exciting.
All right, so Riley is on SMU total points over 21.5 minus 114, but also considering SMU in the futures market, given that matchup with them against Boise State would be pretty advantageous for SMU were they to win this game. Next game up is Clemson at Texas right now, FanDuel Sportsbook. Texas favored by 11.5, and the total in this game is 51.5. Clemson needed a Syracuse win. They needed to win against SMU. They got all those things to fall their way, and now they are facing one of the top teams in the nation. So they're fortunate to be here, but they've got a lot of experience in these big games under Dabo Swinney. So can Clemson cover a big spread down in Austin?
Yeah, so as we're seeing here, public's on Clemson when it comes to that spread, and I get it. I mean, 11.5, that's a really big number, and I totally agree with the coaching standpoint. I mean, you have Sarkisian for Texas that haven't won a game this big. And then you got Dabo with 2 national championships. So I get it. And honestly, this game overall, I'm just not a fan of much of anything here. Logic to me tells me Texas should win this pretty easily. And there's a lot of numbers out there that say that. And even if you look at projection models like Number Fire's model or College Football Nerds, all that stuff has Texas by over 18 points. So you like their chance of covering it. But that's just such a big number. It makes me nervous. I won't go for it. And if I had to go for anything in this game, it's going to another team total over 31.5 for Texas. I think their offense is going to be the thing I trust the most. And my biggest reasoning for not going over 51.5 for just the overall total, I don't trust Clemson's offense in this. And I think Texas's defense has been overlooked a lot this year. It is really good, and their secondary has been elite. And when you're talking about, I think they're second in the country in EPA allowed per drop back, Texas's defense. And when Clemson just throws the ball a lot and their efficiency running the ball isn't great, I don't know if they'll score enough to help that 51.5 total. Now I like Texas's chances of scoring just from the fact that Georgia game for them was just a mess. I don't know if they're cursed against them or what, but before that, I mean, Georgia's defense their numbers on the year just aren't that great, but Texas's run defense was just dominant before they played, or run offense was dominant before they played Georgia. They're going to play Georgia, and they have 31 rushing yards on 28 attempts. I don't understand it. I don't know why it was so bad, because going into that game, I took Texas because I was like, their run offense has been so good, and I don't think Georgia will stop it. I think this is a game where we get back to that. Clemson's run defense hasn't been very good. Even in a positive game script with a big lead against SMU, SMU still had over 150 rushing, and I think it was 4.5 yards per carry against Clemson. So Clemson's run defense is just not very good. We had Texas averaging 245 rushing yards per game over those last 2 regular season games. So I think bare minimum, they're going to have a lot of success on the ground, and I think that's enough to put up a lot of points in this one at home.
Yeah, the team total right now is at 31.5. Over for them is minus 114. Kelvin Banks looks like he is probably going to be back for this game for Texas as well. So not official as of yet, but it does seem like he should be back out there. It should be a big boost for them as well. So Riley is on the Texas team total over 31.5 at minus 114. Let's talk about what I think might be the most anticipated game of this weekend. That is Tennessee taking on Ohio State. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, Ohio State favored by 7.5. Total in this game is 45.5. This should be a fun one on both sides. Ohio State obviously stumbled against Michigan, but they've been stout outside of that this entire year. Do you see them getting back on track to dominant ways against a very good Tennessee team, or can Tennessee do enough to cover here?
Yeah, so this is a bit of a personal game here, and I won't deny some bias, me being a Columbus kid and growing up rooting for the Buckeyes. But yeah, so it's been interesting to hear a lot of the local talk after, of course, the disaster against Michigan, mostly with coaching. But I've seen a lot of stuff, just the way Tennessee fans are talking, national media. This is one of those games that's kind of a gut feeling for me. Um, I understand talent doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win every game, but I still firmly believe Ohio State has the most talented team in the country. Don't know if that means they'll win a lot of games or win the national championship, but just looking at what the public's betting right there, everybody's on Tennessee. And I understand Ohio State's been very up and down. They obviously looked really bad last time around. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of stuff that people are overlooking in this game. For example, Tennessee's been bad on the road. They've only had 4 road games this season, one of which was against Vanderbilt, where there was more Tennessee fans than Vanderbilt. So to me, like, you can already say that's not a true road game. So you look at their other 3 games, and they played Oklahoma, Georgia, and Arkansas on the road. They lost 2 of those games. So even if you want to count that Vanderbilt game, they're 2-2 on the road. Of course, going on the road at night in Columbus is going to be one of, if not the most daunting road environments they've seen this season. Me just hearing the local talk, Ohio State fans have been clamoring for a night home game all season, and they finally get it. So I think, you might actually see that stadium be rowdy for once, because it has been disappointing at times. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff like that. They're not very good on the road. If you look at their just efficiency on offense on the road, Tennessee is at 7.9 yards per passing attempt on the season. But when they're on the road, it goes down to 6.3 yards per passing attempt. So the passing offense hasn't been good on the road. Let's see if I butcher this, but Nico Iamaleava, I think, something like that.
Iamaleava. I've been practicing it. I butchered it last time too, so I practiced it like 40 times. I might have done it again, but I think we might have gotten it this time.
Yeah, that sounded a lot better than my attempt. So we'll just go with Nico. But he's not been very good. He's so talented. He really is. Yeah. You can see it when he throws the ball, but it just, on the road, he hasn't played very well. And then the weather aspect, SEC teams coming up north has been one of my most anticipated thing with this playoff is how are they going to react to that? I mean, it's the same premise as anytime we see the Miami Dolphins in cold weather, and it's just my goodness. But this is supposed to be one of the coldest games Tennessee's played in since the 1970s. Columbus forecast is calling for temperatures in the low 20s, feeling around 17 to 18 degrees. So I think that's another factor you should take into account. But overall, I'm going to go with Ohio State to cover, and that's more of a gut feeling. But if I had to go with just one thing I feel best on, it's going to be the under. Now, it moving down to 45.5 isn't the best, because when I took this, it was 46.5. But these are the top 2 defenses in the country when it comes to EPA allowed per play. Ohio State's offense, I think the biggest reason where I think this could get ugly is just Tennessee hasn't seen receivers like Ohio State has all year. And you would think after the Michigan game, where they kind of just refused to throw the ball, you think they would learn a lesson after that. Now, you're also nervous about Ohio State's offensive line, though, which everybody knows at this point, a ton of injury issues. And when you have Ryan Day and a presser saying that they're going to be rotating starting guards in a playoff game, doesn't make you feel really good. Plus, I'd say Tennessee's biggest positive is their front 7 on defense. They're 10th in the country in pass rushing grade. You got a couple NFL guys on that line, and James Pierce and Omar Norman Lott. So I don't know if Will Howard's going to get enough time, but if he does, I think this will get ugly. And ultimately, I just trust Ohio State's defense. I think for the most part, outside of that Oregon game, they've been really good all season. As soon as you even limit Dylan Sampson, this offense kind of just goes downhill. This is probably going to be really similar to what we saw from that offense when they played Oklahoma. Oklahoma is 4th in the nation in EPA allowed per carry. Ohio State's 3rd in that category. When Tennessee played Oklahoma, Sampson only had 3.8 yards per carry, and he's 5.8 on the season, so big difference there. So this defensive front I trust for Ohio State. And if they're going to limit that run and the numbers we're seeing from this passing offense on the road, it just hasn't been good. So ultimately, I just think Ohio State's defense is going to get this done. But we have worries on both sides of the ball. So I just don't think there's going to be many points, especially when it's going to be as cold as it is.
Yeah, right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, the total for this game is 45.5. Under is -1 away. I do want to go back to what we were talking about before. You mentioned talent, and that's one thing we discussed with Dr. Ed Fang on the college basketball side of things, is that preseason polls are actually predictive of how teams will do in the tournament, because it's an indicator of talent. You know, you get this wisdom of the crowds where you poll a bunch of people and they understand recruits and stuff like that. And that stuff shines in the postseason. You're a Kentucky fan, you know how important talent is once you get to tournament time. That stuff still matters. And Ohio State, like, they funneled so much into this year. They're pushing all this money towards Ibuka. They're pushing all this money towards Travion Henderson to get those guys to come back for another year. They did. Hasn't had like amazing seasons, but like, we know that talent is still there. There's a reason why those guys were getting a lot of NFL draft hype last year. So from a talent perspective, Ohio State is phenomenal. And we haven't really seen that for the entirety of the year, but it does still matter. So I think that kind of angle of betting on the more talented team, and Tennessee has a lot of talent still, but Tennessee is a step above that. I think that is a wise process-based thing to do, even when we get to this time of the year.
Yeah, just kind of dipping back into Tennessee's passing offense and just the whole talent thing too is Tennessee's pass blocking hasn't been very good this year either. I think both their offensive tackles are pretty susceptible, and this goes right back to the whole talent thing where, I mean, their Ohio State's defensive line, like I said, I trust that front just from a talent perspective. And I mean, you have NFL guys all over that line. So I'm really interested to see how Ohio State's edge rushers play. I think coming into the year, you had JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer going into the year as maybe like first-round picks. They haven't been that. One of the reasons Ohio State hasn't been that good, but they're getting some favorable matchups, have a chance here to, you know, really make some splash plays. So it's just when you have matchups like that on Tennessee, like really in multiple spots, whether it be Ohio State's receivers or their edge rushers against some spots where Tennessee's kind of looked vulnerable at times. And you got to think at least in one or two of those spots that Ohio State can finally, you know, perform where they should. Now I know they didn't do that last game, but sure, I at least like the bet still.
It's not just one game, you know, other games matter too. And I think that's important to keep in mind for sure. Okay. So we are on the under here for Ohio State versus Tennessee at 45.5 at -108. That is all that we have here for today, breaking down this opening round of the college football playoff. Again, coming back with you once again tomorrow to break down some thoughts on NFL week 16 with Megan Payton. Of course, Austin Swain joins me Friday for NFL player props as well. To get those shows as they are posted, search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcast, but also check out the YouTube page, subscribe there, enable notifications, and leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those who have done so as always. Riley, appreciate the time. Good luck to your Buckeyes on Saturday. To you, enjoy the games. Hopefully the other games you're able to sit and have some stress-free viewing as well. And we'll talk to you once again soon.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Should have a fun weekend ahead. Can't wait for it.
I certainly hope so for sure. Again, find Riley on X at _Riley8. I'm on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the first round of this 12-team college football playoff. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow to get you set for NFL week number 16. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.